In a dark corner of the old castle, where the cold, moldy walls reflected emptiness, a hanged girl named Ariana Grant was found. Ariana Bronte was born into a marriage that was not a witness to love or desire, but rather the result of cold calculations, an instrument of political maneuver. She was a flawlessly noble princess of the Eastern Kingdom, but her life was filled with despair. It was all she could afford, a simple affection that was not betrayed, not changed, not destroyed. She dreamed that someone would at least care about her a little, because this world was so cruel to those who could not force themselves to be part of the political mechanism. She was like a shadow in her own home. Her husband was cold and her family did not see her as a person. Every day, Ariana became more and more tired of the loneliness that enveloped her like a thick fog. The man who bowed before her was cold and judgmental, as if he was not interested in her soul or her fate. His cruel words, full of contempt, sounded like a sentence for the girl. When the boy ascends the throne, his imperial palace will become her sanctuary. She reached out to him, trying to believe that he could be the one who could pull her out of the abyss of loneliness, but the more she reached out, the more doubts crept into her heart. Flattering speeches brought her no comfort, although she continued to listen to them, hoping that they would at least warm her a little. Ariana's soul was tormented, and every moment when she felt warmth was like a precious gift that she had been waiting for so long. Like many before her, Ariana agreed to submit, thinking it would lead her to happiness. She became his puppet. Prince Gerald was the one who manipulated her, holding the strings that controlled her destiny. She hurt so many people and paid for it with blood on her hands. They gave the order to capture the traitor who killed His Majesty the Emperor and His Highness the Crown Prince. Ariana could not imagine that she would be betrayed so cruelly, that those whom she considered close and dear would be capable of such actions. She could not comprehend how His Majesty, the one who had promised protection and support, could treat her so coldly and cruelly. A completely new favorite suddenly appeared before her eyes. A girl in an exquisite green dress, like the embodiment of everything that Ariana could only dream of. They kissed right in front of Ariana, oblivious to her presence, their actions so open and bold that it seemed like every gesture was aimed precisely at destroying the last remnants of her hope. She screamed hysterically as her heart, already full of pain and disappointment, could not bear this last drop of humiliation. All her ignorance led her to that prison. Ariana asked her sister what exactly she did wrong. But her sister considered her relative insignificant. She mimicked the girl. She called the very fact of Ariana's birth a mistake, and these words, spoken with icy cruelty, sounded like a sentence, as if Ariana's life was nothing more than an accident. To her, Ariana's blue hair was not just an unusual decoration, but a stigma that repelled people, causing them to avoid her. But the sister did not understand why Ariana suddenly turned out to be needed by the prince. She grabbed the girl by the collar and swung her arms, saying that she shouldn't have been born, that she needed to sit quietly and pretend that she didn't exist. The ghost of the now-deceased Ariana watched what was happening from the side. Her family did not love their daughter, and this cold, merciless truth became more and more obvious with each passing day. The girl was sold into marriage as if she were nothing more than a mere commodity to be exchanged for political influence or advantage. Her wonderful blue hair, like the deepest ocean waters, was adorned with a veil, light and transparent, like fog in the early morning. What an ordinary person receives naturally, like air, became for her an elusive luxury that she could never truly enjoy. There was no simple affection for her, and this feeling of emptiness and alienation permeated her entire existence, as if she were invisible. Ariana was so terribly stupid that, despite all her suffering and disappointments, she continued to believe in the illusions that she herself created, hoping for love. The sister said that she was right, and that it was all her fault. The relative, of course, was glad that her sister understood, but it was too late. She hit the blue-haired person on the head. Ariana considered herself a useless creature, Prince Gerald, who gave shelter to such an impudent woman. The girl chose to remain faithful to His Majesty. She decided to take the blame and die. Her sin was that she dared to desire love, although it was unlikely, but still, if she had at least one more chance. Her sister saw a still living body trapped in a noose and wished for her to be reborn as an insect. Then at least there will be some benefit from it. It will become lunch for some animal. She wanted to be given another chance to live life. There was one thing she truly wished for, and that was that no one would ever love her, because she herself no longer wanted to be loved. Ariana wanted to burn all her enemies before her eyes. She will hold everyone accountable for their crimes. She will never repeat this mistake. The vile Countess Ariana, who killed the former emperor, deeply repented of her sins, committing suicide in prison on her birthday, thus closing the case of the murder of the former emperor of the Camellia Empire. It seemed that the continent, exhausted by endless conflicts, was pacified by the establishment of an empire and its vassal commanderies. But between the commanderies surrounding the empire from the east, west, south, and north, a hidden struggle for power raged constantly. A prosperous eastern commandery that keeps even the emperor in check thanks to its abundant resources and military might. A cunning western commander who profited by driving a wedge between the eastern commander and the emperor. The southern district was quietly secluded and seemed to have withdrawn from worldly affairs. The northern district, where the youngest and most handsome marquis in history ruled. The influence of the four great lords rivaled that of the royal family. Among them, the most talked about was a young ruler known for his noble moon-like beauty. His name was Marquis Cyrus. Becoming Marquis of the North at a young age, he harbored a deep grudge against the emperor, who ignored the death of his parents and seemed interested only in the war to subdue the heretics. But in reality, he was quietly gathering his forces and waiting for the right moment. When the third prince, Gerald, conspired with the Western Marquis and seized the throne, Cyrus, Marquis of the North, declared independence for the Northern Territory, heralding the beginning of the Archon Empire. At the same time, he declared war on the Camellia Empire. Starting from the eastern lands, the Camellia Empire, whose attack reached the western lands, was conquered, and the heads of Emperor Gerald and Empress Victoria were hung on the walls of the imperial palace. Their crime was the murder of the former crown prince. This happened 2 years after Ariana was executed on false charges. An iron-blooded marquis with hair as white as moonlight and eyes like rubies, Cyrus, who would later become the emperor of the Arcana Empire, and, thirsting for love but only used, Ariana Bronte, who died unjustly. These two, who went their separate ways in history without ever meeting, by some twist of fate, Ariana returns 12 years before all these events happened, and they meet for the first time. This took place in the western lands, at the residence of the Duke of Bronte. Ariana caught snowflakes from her balcony. She didn't understand why she was alive, since she had been executed, but now she has returned to her youth. Ariana looked at the girls walking under her balcony. They were discussing a party that the Duke of the North himself would be attending. Arena's older sister, her name was Elena, dreamed that the Duke would use magic to create an ice flower for her. The girl next to her said that, for example, the Duke frightened her. This girl was the third Bronte sister. She bore the name Victoria. She shared the rumor that the Duke ignored even the imperial princess, and also that he killed a dancer for approaching without permission. They discussed his arrival in the city and were eager to see him. Elena and Victoria were at that age when rumors of the arrival of the Duke of the North stirred them up. Ariana returned to her 16th year. Memories of Elena coming to her in her last moments and what she did flashed before her eyes again. She remembered Victoria, who was the one who took away her title of Empress. When everything turned out exactly like this, she completely decided for herself that her beloved sisters would pay for everything. She was going to take revenge for all the torment for her previous life. They would still regret it. Lady Ariana was invited to the table by her maid, her voice cold and expressionless, as if it was simply the performance of duties. The maid reminded her that her mistress had not eaten for several days, and her words sounded like an icy prick with a hint of hidden irritation. She brought the moldy dinner to the table, which smelled disgusting, and the air was filled with a rotting smell that became more and more unbearable with each breath. The maid smiled sarcastically and said that Ariana would never find another maid as kind as the one who took such good care of the young lady. It was that very day that she was framed, accused of stealing her mother's necklace and locked in a room. She refused to eat the spoiled food, and this was the last straw, followed by a cruel punishment. She was beaten, as if for the slightest manifestation of will. The noise attracted Lady Bronte's attention, and she entered the room, her steps calm and measured. She protested her innocence, but her words, despite all the sincerity, sounded like a helpless whisper. But Louise, who wanted to destroy her, hid the necklace under the table, and was scolded even more severely when it was found. Ariana sat at the table and just looked at the moldy food. She had learned from this bitter experience and knew that the necklace was still under the table. The girl asked her subject if she had been offered to eat these disgusting remains of food. Shameless Louise said to eat it faster. The lady could not stand Lady Ariana, who was brought from the eastern lands. Elena had similar feelings for her sister. It was on her orders that she brought it from the trash can, wanting to see if her sister could eat it. Mistress Elena knew that the servants were making fun of her, and she liked it. Louise pounced on Ariana and told her to quickly eat the scraps that were brought to her. She knocked the girl in the chair to the floor. The maid was happy, because in front of her was almost a princess. She didn't know when she would have another chance to mock such a person. Ariana stood up and picked up the maid's apron, saying that the fabric looked expensive, more expensive than her entire outfit. Louise didn't want to talk to her. She kicked the girl in the stomach. The maid wanted her to cry and beg her, to crawl before her like an insect. After this, Ariana found the strength to get up again. The maid told her to stop pretending to be someone unknown and to eat what she brought. The girl listened. Her grandmother was passing by her chambers. Suddenly she calmed down, sat down at the table and agreed to eat. Louise was shocked, to say the least, by this turn of events. The maid did not understand what had come over the girl before. She had not looked into his eyes and had humiliated herself in front of a simple maid. For several days now, she had been speaking to her in a condescending manner and had changed her gaze as if she were a different person. Ariana made an incomprehensible sound. The maid was frightened. The girl grabbed her stomach and began to fall. Louise shook her and asked her to pull herself together. She didn't know what to do because she wasn't coming to her senses. If Ariana died, it would be her fault. Realizing this, she hastened to ask someone else for help. The young people noticed that the second princess had lost consciousness. If she had been a princess and had stayed in the eastern lands, she would not have suffered so much. Even if she was the daughter of his parents' enemy, and perhaps an enemy herself, she was not guilty of anything. She didn't understand anything. They didn't even feed her properly. The white-haired guy didn't believe at all that the girl didn't understand anything. Ariana was still lying on the floor and smiled slyly. A tired, clearly sick girl lay on the bed. The doctor sat next to her and thought about how he could help her. It was food poisoning and also signs of malnutrition. He advised the Duchess to pay attention to the health of the young lady. The girls whispered that if the Duchess did not have financial difficulties, it would be a good idea to feed the girl fresh food. After listening to the doctor, she let him go. Matilda Bronte, the Duchess's grandmother, asked her daughter-in-law if this was the room Ariana usually lived in. Ariana's mother, Rachel, said the girl was briefly locked in the room to reflect after the theft. The girl calmly listened to their dialogue, lying on the bed. For Matilda, this was a ridiculous excuse. The people here knew how they treated her. Grandmother had not been to the duchy for a long time and probably did not fully understand the situation. Ariana decided to take advantage of the situation and stood up. Putting her hand on her chest, she said that she did not steal the necklace. The grown women turned at the sound of her voice. Her mother approached her and asked her to take care of herself. Ariana turned to her grandmother and begged her to believe her. According to her, she did not even know what the necklace looked like, did not understand why she was being accused. Her grandmother did not care about her attitude towards her because she was not of her blood, but the old lady's maids came from noble families. It would be problematic if rumors started to circulate that her daughter-in-law was abusing her daughter. Ariana decided to press the issue and ask if her grandmother cared about it, perhaps because she was not the Duke of Bronte's biological daughter. This amazed absolutely everyone without exception. Matilda glanced at the maids. Grandma asked Rachel about the necklaces, if there was any proof of Ariana's guilt. The daughter-in-law apologized and said that it was a necklace her husband gave her at the wedding. This necklace was generously studded with diamonds. Ariana said she saw this necklace on Louise. The maid did not expect such a turn of events. The girl said that the maid bragged to her that she was rich and had dozens of diamonds, which is why she wore beautiful clothes. After this, the order was given to search Louise. They detained her and put their hands in her pocket. She screamed that she had nothing to hide. After that, the same necklace was taken out of her pocket. Both Louise and Rachel were shocked by this turn of events. Ariana pretended to be surprised. Her job was done. A small thing, of course, but still proof. The maid fell to her knees and said that there had been a misunderstanding, that Miss Ariana had set her up. Matilda was angry at this. She could not forgive it. She ordered Louise to be beaten and thrown out of the mansion. Louise reached out to Rachel, hoping for help, reminding her that she was only trying to protect Miss Elena. Everyone understood that Elena ordered Ariana to be tortured. If they drive her away, bad rumors about Elena will spread. Rachel asked Matilda not to be too angry. She was going to scold the maid severely and discipline her. Of course, Grandma was disappointed. Rachel met Jacob Bronte at a young age and fell in love. But she was a princess, and Matilda, then a duchess, did not want her son to feel disadvantaged by marrying a lady of higher status. Jacob was never able to convince his mother. While Rachel was trying to win over Bronte, her father gave her strict orders to marry another duke and find out all the secrets. So the girl married the duke, gave birth to Ariana, and then returned. The grandmother only reluctantly gave her consent to the marriage after Rachel, having divorced, returned and explained everything. To crave love even when you destroy yourself, that was how she was like her mother. But now Ariana has become completely different. She was no longer going to give up everything for love. The golden-haired guy was convinced that karma exists. He liked that young lady. His interlocutor could not believe that Ariana was only 16. She had a mature expression on her face, a look that was not affected by the maid's rude behavior, and sometimes even an inexplicable aura. Even though it irritated him, he couldn't take his eyes off her. Once the culprit was found, the golden-haired man asked his companion what he would do next. If it got dark while they were still searching, the guy was going to take a look around the mansion. He suspected that what they were looking for was in Rachel Bronte's possession. Ariana knew that when night fell, everyone disappeared from the kitchen. Rachel hated her own daughter terribly because she looked like her unloved ex-husband. She often beat her and didn't feed her properly. Having made her way into the kitchen, she took some food for herself she should have eaten like that in secret before, and she began to wonder why she so stupidly starved herself every time. From now on, she was not going to starve as before, even if secretly, but she would now eat for herself. She opened her mouth and was already bringing the food to him. How someone came into the kitchen and said that the second young lady Bronte was eating strangely. After taking a bite, she turned to face the speaker. Ariana didn't know who it was. It was clearly not a maid. She had never heard that voice. A stranger stood in front of her. She rose from the floor. He snapped his fingers and instantly everything around froze. At that moment, everything fell into place for her. An ice mage who can freeze space with one gesture, eyes as red as blood, skin as white as pearls. There was no doubt that it was the Duke of the North, Cyrus, in front of her, but the question arose as to what he was doing there. Before Ariana ran into Cyrus, she was just entering the kitchen. As expected, the grandmother showed no interest in her, but that's okay. With the power she has now, this is the best the girl could do. A few months later, Rachel will marry her off to the Viscount, and once she turns 16, she will sell her. It was as if the mother was expecting this. It was all for the sake of expanding her influence. She had to get out of this mansion before that happened. She remembered those terrible days and had no desire to ever return to that life. To do this, she needed the power of the Eastern Duke. Her father, whom she never spoke to, was connected to the East. In her past life, she saw the Eastern Archduke only once at an imperial reception. They didn't speak, but she could read his expression. Her father also absolutely hated her because he was Rachel's daughter. But it was okay. Even such a person could be forced to accept her. The vassal states of the East, West, South, and North surrounded the Camellia Empire under the pretext of it, but even among them there were ranks of power and political struggle. The Western Archduke's sending of his daughter Rachel to the Eastern Archduke was also a form of checks and balances. Because of the Western Archduke, his relationship with the Emperor fell apart, so if she tells the weakness of the Western Archduke to the East, her father will accept her. She did not expect paternal love. There was only one thing she wanted, the status of the daughter of the Eastern Archduke. If she can get it, she is ready to endure any treatment. Cyrus, leaning against the wall, said that the second young lady Bronte ate very unusually and that she had a big mouth. There were rumors that the Archduke of the North came to the city around this time, and apparently this was true. A man she had never seen in her past life, a figure she had only heard of through rumors, always said to be somewhere far away. And now this Archduke of the North had entered the mansion at such an hour, it could not be a good sign. Blood always followed him, and now this very Archduke of the North appeared right in front of her. It was unclear what this could mean. It was worth considering only the worst-case scenarios, and in one of them, he could kill her to silence her. Her hanged ghost put his arm around her shoulders, giving her reassurance. She was no longer afraid of death because it was not the first time for her. She understood that life would end anyway. She was like a bonus. There was nothing to be afraid of. She removed Cyrus's hand from her face, said that she did not expect him to visit them at such an hour. If I had known in advance, I would have gone to greet him. The guy was shocked. Cyrus asked how she knew him. She replied that silver hair and red eyes were only given to his family, and he was currently the only one of its kind. Besides, she had heard that he was as handsome as a painting, and they said that he made a woman's heart beat wildly. The guy noted that her heart was not beating faster. She didn't understand his purpose. She expected him to threaten to kill her if she said she saw him, but now she couldn't understand him at all. Ariana invited me to join her for dinner. The girl asked if he couldn't see how excited she was after finally seeing the Archduke in the flesh, whom she had only heard about in rumors. She meant that he was disturbing his meal and thus asked him to leave, but the interlocutor was unperturbed. Ariana asked to pretend nothing happened. Cyrus asked if he really pretended he didn't see anyone, would she pretend they didn't see his impeccable table manners? She said it was truly brilliant of him. Women would inevitably have one of two reactions when they saw him. They were either afraid of Cyrus or trying to please him, but Ariana didn't show any of these reactions. His eyes were deep, full of a dark, raging darkness, like a blood-red lake of unfathomable depth. At this time, the Northern Archduke was only 20 years old. The girl went back in time, of course, but it's unclear what kind of experience he went through to look like that. Suddenly he grabbed her hand. The girl did not understand what he had done. Ariana knew that the Archduke killed girls who bothered him. Cyrus asked if his eyes were so mesmerizing that she touched them without realizing it. The girl noticed that he was a little different from what they said about him. She was already about to leave the Archduke, but the young man asked her to wait. The maids entered the kitchen, not understanding why Elena was eating chocolate at such an hour. It was because of Louise that she was upset, even though the reprimand only lasted for a moment. Even the maids noticed that the ladies were being treated with too much condescension. Cyrus held the girl with both hands and covered her mouth with his thumb. It was strange to the maids how well Rachel treated Elena because she was the daughter of the former Duchess. Ariana did not understand what they were talking about. She noticed that the hand of the one holding her was cold. Lady Helena was the daughter of the previous wife, not Rachel. The Duke divorced that countrywoman and married the current lady. It was a touchy subject, so one maid asked another not to bring it up in front of the masters. They couldn't find any chocolate. Ariana was afraid that they would be found. If they saw her like this, it would be a disaster. She was already an eyesore, and now she was caught alone at night with a man. Rachel would delight in mocking her. In her thoughts, she begged them not to find her and Cyrus. The maid finally opened the door behind which the young people were, and she looked straight at them. Cyrus still had his hand over Ariana's mouth. The maid, as if nothing had happened, found the chocolate and hurried away from there. Ariana had a lot of questions and no answers yet. She didn't understand whether the maid was pretending not to see them. That couldn't be the case, because the maids in that estate were just waiting to set her up. The more mistakes she made, the more generously Rachel rewarded them. It was beyond the realm of possibility. Apparently they really weren't seen, even though they were right in front of her. The girl realized that it was the magic of the Northern Duke. Cyrus did her a favor and told her that she now owed him. Ariana didn't understand what he was talking about. If he hadn't appeared, the girl would have been in her room long ago. She said that she wasn't aware of the Duke's habit of forcing people into debt for unsolicited services. The guy replied that she couldn't know that because they had just met, and she should have started studying right now. It was like a move a man makes to flirt with a woman. But the cold look in his eyes did not change at all. Ariana asked what he wanted from her, but Cyrus knew that the girl was not recognized by the lady of the ducal house. They had just met, but he already knew her very well. The guy knew that her mother preferred the eldest daughter over the one who was her own, and asked the girl if she wanted to know why. But Ariana already knew why Rachel treasured Elena so much. But this was a secret that she would not have known if it had not been for the third prince. But it was unknown how Cyrus knew so much, what really motivated him. Suddenly he grabbed her by the shoulder, and he pulled me into his arms. Cyrus revealed that Elena was Rachel Bronte's biological daughter, and the girl had to pretend to be surprised so that no one would suspect anything. Although she tried, she still didn't seem particularly shocked, and the young man decided to continue the story. When negotiations for marriage with the Eastern Duke began, Rachel was already pregnant with Jacob's child. When the Western Duke learned of this, he became furious. Rachel would rather die than give up her child. Because of the girl's stubbornness, the Duke allowed her to have a child. But instead of raising him in his own home, he brought the daughter of a low-born baron from a remote province and married her to Jacob. Immediately after the wedding, she faked a pregnancy and raised Elena, born from Rachel, as her own daughter. Rachel entered into a political marriage in the eastern province while working as a spy. When it was time for her to return, Jacob spread rumors that his wife had cheated on him and run away, but no one saw the former Duchess again. Soon the couple, who had remarried, had Victoria, a symbol of their love. But Elena, though of noble blood, lived as the daughter of a commoner, a living reminder of Rachel's pain. Ariana asked him about the purpose of this story. He said that he was interested in what she planned to do next. But the girl was not going to do anything. She was just a girl who was not even recognized as a young lady from the ducal house. Ariana thanked him. Meeting His Highness was a great honor for her. Cyrus asked if this meant that she didn't want to see him anymore. He understood correctly. She was sure that he had the skill to look the other way. This meeting was more than enough. She was very tired, so she decided to take her leave. She turned and started to walk away, but Cyrus addressed her as the second daughter of the House of Bronte and took her by the shoulder. She had never heard this title in her past life, the confession she sincerely craved, but now understood that it was not hers. She turned around and said that she was neither Bronte nor the young lady of the ducal house. The young man asked what he should call her. She turned to him again, and she said that he had no reason to call her anything. Cyrus left the estate. He was asked what he had just done. Got involved in unnecessary trouble, started empty chatter, although there was no need for it. He pulled the young lady in and used stealth magic. They put a hand on his forehead to check his temperature, and his partner began to think that he was getting sick, that the food here was not suitable for him. Cyrus waved his hand and said he was fine, but the motives were still unclear. He believed that Ariana had value, that she could be useful. He asked if his plan was to flirt with her and tell her confidential secrets instead of the usual threats. Cyrus realized that the lady could not be broken by brute force. Ariana clearly knew something. If he could find out, it would be easier to deal with the Western and Eastern dukes. He was asked what would happen if it proved useless. Without any hesitation, Cyrus replied that he would get rid of her. A girl in a red dress was walking down the corridor and someone called out to her. It was Victoria. She heard that her sister had problems with her mother. She kindly asked how Elena was feeling. The girl didn't like this question. She poked her sister in the chest and said that she was to blame for everything. Elena was the only one who heard the suggestion to poison Ariana with scraps from her, but in the end, the girl fainted, and their grandmother found out about it. Victoria said that she had only mentioned that it was proper for their half-sister to eat scraps, but now, thanks to the efforts of their mother, she lived on an equal footing with them. But she regretted that Elena was scolded. This apology was enough for her. Victoria assumed that her sister was uneasy and that Ariana was to blame for everything. The sister noted that because of the girl, Elena had one less maid, which was extremely inconvenient, and she was idle in a luxurious room. The eldest daughter, Rachel, couldn't stand the middle one, wondering why she didn't stay in the East instead of coming there and causing trouble. Looking at Cyrus's portrait, Elena felt better. The girl was convinced that the idea of hanging the Duke's portrait was a good one. They said that the nobles asked to be portrayed in portraits as better than they really were, but Elena didn't care. She would soon find out the truth. She wondered when he would come to visit them, whether their mother had sent him an invitation. Victoria had no doubt that she did it because her sister begged her, but the girl felt a little sorry for Ariana. Elena didn't like these words and didn't understand why she felt sorry for her. Ariana would probably want to come to the reception where the Duke will be, but she doesn't have a suitable dress, nor does she have basic knowledge of etiquette. Victoria understood that her unloved sister would be disgraced if she came. Elena had a brilliant idea and threw herself on her sister's neck. Ariana stood by the window and looked at the sky. It had been several days since she had seen the Northern Duke. Luckily for her, she never came across Cyrus again. Perhaps he had already returned, or, like in his past life, he had come and then left without leaving a trace. The girl felt cold and crossed her arms over her chest. Tomorrow, there was to be a reception in the garden of the Duke of Bronte's house. Although it was a stretch to call it a garden party, in winter they simply ate and drank tea inside the huge greenhouse. There was only one reason for holding this event in such weather. In a few months, Elena was supposed to have a debutante ball, after which Rachel intended to introduce her to influential families from the capital. And in her past life, her efforts were not in vain. The maids whispered behind Ariana's back. The girl understood that her mother would soon find out that she had left the room, but she didn't care. Elena was probably busy preparing for the event at that moment. Last time on this day, she was let out of her tiny room for the first time. Ariana was so happy to be free that she wandered around the garden. But suddenly Rachel called out to her, heading towards the heroine with an angry look. Ariana wasn't happy that they had to face each other. Her one and only mother hated her, and the daughter herself despised her relationship with her. Rachel walked up to her and punched her in the face. The mother recalled that she had been told not to go outside without permission, but this time she refused to tolerate it. Ever since Ariana had returned, there had been only one question that had been bothering her, and she wanted to ask her face to face. The daughter asked if she really needed permission just to look at her. She asked if her father's eyes were the reason Rachel hated her. Was it really enough that she resembled the man she hated to deserve her hatred? Rachel didn't like this question. She began to scold her daughter even more loudly and hit her even more desperately. The mother said that she should be thanked for the very fact of birth, because she did not want to give life to something like this. Rachel was forced to leave Elena to give birth to Ariana, and she was burning with hatred. The woman said that both her daughter and her father, who was the Duke of the West, were disgusting. She imagined what would have happened if she hadn't listened to him then. Her father wrote to her that Ariana needed to be brought in, raised, and married off. That is, to do the same as they did with Rachel herself. The mother felt sick just looking at her. She was about to swing again, but was stopped. Suddenly bad weather hit and it started hailing. Mother Covered told Ariana to stay under the hail, not to leave until she gave permission, so she thought about her behavior. Turning to the other side, she saw a hand reaching out to her. It was the hand of the white-haired Cyrus. Ariana was skeptical but decided to check one last time. If she is hated, then she will hate with all her heart, and uses every opportunity to stick a knife in. The girl asked the guy who arrived if he had control over the bad weather. To him it was a trivial spell. He noted that he had again shown the lady a favor. Cyrus asked her why she was provoking her mother. Ariana replied that she was only asking about things that were bothering her. The girl did not know that his lordship was there, otherwise she would have greeted him properly, but the guy did not like greetings. He could break all the ladies' hearts if he slept in a tree and froze to death. He asked if she would be sad about that outcome. The girl said that she would cry every night, but in reality, as Cyrus noted, she would have fun. Ariana noted his insight and said she was going to leave. Cyrus asked her to stop, but he could not name her or her status. The girl didn't quite understand, but then she remembered their previous conversation. She thought that the all-powerful Duke took everything literally. Cyrus wanted to give her advice, but she persistently refused. The girl asked his lordship to call her Ariana. Cyrus smiled back. The girl was surprised that he was capable of such emotion and asked him for advice. Cyrus advised Ariana to learn to hide that look. Thirsting for murder in such a fragile body will only hasten her end. But Ariana noted that the same thing could be read in his lordship's eyes. But unlike her, he was strong. The girl envied this. If she were also strong, she would not have to hide her feelings. The guy asked what feelings were being discussed. But Ariana doubted that such a busy man would have time to understand this. She hoped that Cyrus would finish his business sooner. He asked if the girl wanted him to finish everything and disappear so as not to bother her. The girl, putting her hand on her chest, answered this in the negative. After a while, he was already walking alone. They noticed the incredible appearance of the girl in the dress. She didn't look like a 16-year-old either in appearance or in behavior. There was clear doubt that Rachel had taught her imperial etiquette. Whatever one may say, the Duke helped her again. Cyrus admitted that he was doing her a favor so that it would be easier for him to use her later. Ariana looked at her reflection and wondered if she had been walking around with that expression on her face. She instantly changed her face and realized that she needed to be more careful. She felt uneasy knowing that the Northern Duke had seen right through her, and she knew from the start that things would not go according to plan in her second life. Her actions will change a lot in the future, but she will adapt. But how difficult it was to deal with such an unpredictable figure as the Northern Duke. Victoria said with a smile that she had finally found Ariana. The youngest daughter of the Bronte family was a year younger than her. Unlike Elena and Rachel, who openly bullied her, Victoria was kind to her and the girl trusted her. Ariana didn't understand why it took her so long to figure out who was egging Elena on from the shadows. Victoria knew how to use her charm. With its help, she captivated Gerald and became Empress. Then the naive Ariana followed the path she had laid out for her, to the path of destruction. Victoria leaned into her ear and asked if her sister was okay. Perhaps the most difficult obstacle in Ariana's path will be Victoria. Cetra noticed that the girl looked different. Ariana was worried that she wasn't being calm enough. She was still young and needed to act age-appropriately. The girl said that she thought that if she acted more maturely, her mother would love her. Victoria hugged her sister and said that everyone already loved her. The sister said that the more the parents loved the child, the stricter they treated him. It turns out that the parents had high hopes for Ariana. Victoria was so easily distracted, you could tell she was a child. Indeed, she understood that her sister had not yet matured. Before Victoria grew up, she planned to rip off that cute mask. She had a chance. She handed Ariana something in a mug and told her to drink it, her gaze cold and somewhat mocking, as if there was more than just concern hidden in this gesture. The girl noticed that the cup was hot. Her fingers involuntarily touched the edge, feeling the heat that instantly ran across her skin. Victoria said that she shouldn't drink tea like that because she was almost an adult. She needed to learn the rules of tea etiquette, and her voice sounded with a hint of disdain, as if she wasn't just giving advice, but trying to point out shortcomings. The girl pointed to the saucer and asked why she thought it was there. She described how when the tea was hot, it was poured into a saucer and drunk with a loud slurp, and there was a hint of mockery in her voice, as if she enjoyed the fact that she could teach Ariana something so basic. Moreover, the louder the slurping, the more respect for the hosts, she said with a hint of importance in her voice. Ariana thanked her, even though she knew Victoria was trying her best to make her look like an idiot. In her past life, the girl didn't know this, and it all ended very badly, but this time, everything will be different. Ariana wouldn't let her trample on her so easily. She couldn't wait for tomorrow's reception. The girl slept, clutching the blanket. She was breathing very heavily. She dreamed of her past life, how women looked at her and discussed her dress. Everyone called her a complete problem. She, not her parents, was to blame for this dress. She drank tea from a saucer as her sister had taught her, which was a disgrace. Rachel apologized for her behavior, citing her background and the fact that the girl seemed to reject all teachers. Everyone sympathized with the lady, but Ariana tried to prove in her dream that she followed what she was taught. And it was all for love. No one could have thought that the girl was a noble lady. Victoria, who had taught her everything, was now saying that Ariana needed to behave a little more restrained. On any other day, she seemed not to notice. The girl woke up from these nightmarish memories in her sleep. On this piercingly cold day, memories of the past enveloped her. Back then, before her rebirth, Elena and Victoria tricked her into dressing up as a village simpleton, and she could only cry, becoming a laughingstock, a kind of problematic aristocrat. Now she was shocked by her stupidity. If no one supported her, she would act on her own. She was going to tell the person who would come to the reception about her situation. Juliana was the emperor's cousin, the most influential lady in the capital's high society. She was the step that would allow the girl to escape from that mansion. Her actions that day were to change the future. What lay ahead was no longer a death from the past. Ariana had to take advantage of this opportunity. Many carriages were approaching the estate. Rachel was desperately trying to arrange the fate of her daughters, to establish connections. Once Cyrus shows up at the reception, the faces of everyone present will be truly unforgettable. The guy understood that his appearance would be entertainment for his partner. It must have been nice to sacrifice ourselves for each other. The partner saw how the first daughter's maids carried a whole mountain of things to the second. The guy suggested that Cyrus take a look at it. He could help. But he didn't want to play the role of a nanny. The girl looked at the dress and told the maid that she was free. Cyrus looked at this and understood that the lady could cope without him. Many noble people have already arrived, Juliana among them. Rachel and her daughters approached her to say hello. The girl noted that she had not seen Bronte's second daughter, and her mother said that Ariana was not feeling well. Elena said that her sister would come soon. The mother broke out in a cold sweat and aggressively reminded him that Ariana was feeling unwell. A second later, the door swung open and the second daughter appeared. She didn't look like what her sisters had planned for her. Rachel started to get really angry. She didn't understand what she was doing there, especially in that form. She tried to show feigned concern and asked why her daughter had come if she said she was sick. Ariana apologized for being late and said that no one had told her what time the appointment started. Victoria didn't understand what her sister was wearing and what happened to that ridiculous hairstyle and absurd dress that Elena had prepared. Victoria was going to send her sister back. Elena hoped that being with her miserable sister would make her more attractive. Ariana pointedly called her mistress. Everyone was shocked by this. They were even more outraged that the first daughter was not against such treatment. They put a hand on the girl's shoulder and asked how she was feeling and where she got the dress. Ariana was hungry because she hadn't eaten properly, but she wasn't sick and she wore her only dress. The girl didn't think this dress was fancy enough, but the maids literally forced her to come there. Everyone saw the new bruises on her arms, which meant that there really wasn't a drop of the Duke of Bronte's blood in her, and the reason for such treatment became clear. But Victoria came into play. She asked Ariana if she enjoyed embarrassing her mother by lying. The girl immediately moved away as if she was about to be hit, said that she remembered her situation, and apologized. The family to which she was bound by blood was powerless. Now that the guests have seen her injuries, any attempt to justify herself will only spur gossip in high society. For them, the truth behind it all is much less interesting than the feud between the sisters of the Bronte house. She didn't care about her reputation compared to the shame and humiliation she had experienced in her past life. Becoming the subject of high society gossip was nothing. The noble ladies asked Ariana's family to stop. They could no longer watch her being tortured. The girl's stomach growled loudly and attracted the attention of those around her. She told them that she had not eaten anything for several days. The ladies asked her to come to them and handed her cookies. Elena was very angry, literally beside herself. She didn't understand why high society girls were so polite to her unloved sister. Elena wanted this evening to be her triumph. Victoria looked at this and understood that everything should be different. Their plan was to make Ariana look like a fool and have those around her laugh at her. One of the girls offered her second daughter some warm tea. Victoria remembered the previous evening and what she had taught her. Ariana poured the tea into a saucer and began to sip it. Everyone was shocked by the girl's behavior. Elena asked her sister why she drank so much. Ariana immediately replied that Lady Victoria had taught her, and she rushed to ask when it was. The girl told about yesterday's invitation of the third sister to her room and her detailed story about tea-drinking etiquette. She also apologized if she did something wrong. Some began to suspect that it was a fake, but the bruises were real, as was the frightened look. The red fan snapped violently, producing a characteristic loud sound. Juliana had heard that the Duchess of Bronte was so protective of her second daughter that she never showed her to anyone. Now the lady saw how dear her daughter was to Rachel. She tried to justify herself by calling it all a misunderstanding, but the bruises in places that were out of reach were clearly not self-inflicted. The woman asked if the Eastern Duke knew how his daughter lived. Juliana personally approached the girl and said that she saw her readiness for her debut. The woman smiled warmly as she looked at her. She said that she would wait for Ariana in the capital during this social season. She could stay at her family estate upon arrival. The reception ended on a miserable note. Of course, beatings followed for her actions, and the girl was locked in the basement of the East Tower. But for her, it no longer mattered. Because Rachel was now trapped, the Duchess had no choice but to take her to that social season. Otherwise, if she refused, the whole world would talk about it. If her reputation could be so easily ruined, Ariana wondered why she had tried so hard to restrain herself. I wondered if love was worth the effort. The first daughter cried at the slightest remark from her mother, but the second did not shed a tear even in the darkness. Ariana turned around and said that there was no place the Northern Duke could not penetrate. No one dared to stand in his way. He walked up to the grate and shone his lamp, but Ariana did not look at him. He hung up the lantern. Everyone knew the girl as Rachel Bronte's own daughter. He didn't understand why she so desperately wanted to get rid of her. Every family, according to Ariana, had its weaknesses. They just had that kind of relationship. The guy crouched down to be closer to her. I asked her if she really thought so. Cyrus wondered if Ariana realized how amazing she was, but if she could spark interest in someone who had no interest in anything, that was enough for her. The young man asked if her words meant that he had nothing to worry about. Ariana was careful with him and even found him annoying. He couldn't remember another woman who treated him like that. He was looking forward to her reaction to new attempts to annoy him. Cyrus asked if the Eastern Duke knew how his daughter had been treated. Ariana assumed so, but even if not, it didn't matter. The event that had taken place had spread throughout high society, so he would not be able to ignore her when she paid him a visit. The Duke will not want it to be said that he abandoned his daughter who was being abused. Cyrus said the girl thought too much for her small head, but his head was no bigger. The young man thought she meant that he was not capable of thinking as well as the girl. Ariana laughed out loud. He said things that were too funny for her liking. Cyrus was shocked by the girl's ability to laugh. He took her face and asked if she could cry. After all, he really wanted to see her tears. The girl looked at him with tired eyes. After a while, she said that she could cry if the young man needed it. The dialogue was truly Tarantino-like. Ariana asked what Cyrus wanted to get from the Bronte estate. But the guy refused to answer, although he himself asked her an endless number of questions. Cyrus said that the girl should have realized that in her position she was obliged to answer. Ariana wondered if she was like the one who was afraid of his sword, but a woman like her would not be afraid of his sword. But the young man recalled the hunger, remembering how he had seen her before. It seemed that she was well fed. Ariana was used to being hungry. It was painful, but not something to be afraid of. Rachel Bronte was furious after that reception. The guy decided to find out if the attitude of the interlocutor would change after a few days of confinement, but he would be surprised if he knew how many days she had already spent in it. There were still things that surprised the Duke. He looked forward to it, his eyes shining with determination and anticipation, as if every moment, every second of waiting was bringing him closer to what he had been planning for so long. The boy quickly walked away. his steps sounding determined and confident, as if he knew that there was nothing more worth lingering about in this place for him. He irritated the heroine very much. His presence seemed to cause a storm of emotions in her. His every word, every movement made her feel how waves of anger and impatience were growing. But it was clear that the young man did not have warm feelings for Rachel. She assumed that the Duke could become her ally. But she remembered the lie of another young man from her past life. Nothing good can come from getting involved with such a powerful figure as the Northern Duke. He didn't seem as cruel to the girl as the rumors described him, but she still didn't fully understand. He wasn't the kind of person who could be easily dealt with. Like Victoria and Elena, there was no chance that he would act according to her will. She had no allies. She could be betrayed at any moment. She had to go this way alone. The Duke stood on top of one of the towers. Cyrus understood that the girl was going to escape from there in the near future. No matter how he looked at her, she did not have the manners of a young lady locked in a house and deprived of a normal education. She had the dignity of a woman sitting on the highest throne of the imperial palace. Ariana was the link between the Eastern and Western Dukes. The Northern Duke was curious about why they needed her, what role they wanted to assign her, but from his observations, the Western Duke was absolutely not interested. And her own mother openly hated her. It seems like she was just used blindly, without any explanation. Although the girl had no intention of meekly allowing herself to be used. In that case, her ultimate goal was unclear. That murderous look, that hatred in her eyes that she could not hide. It is not clear who this was all directed at. Cyrus didn't understand why. Memories from his childhood came before his eyes, of him running in the snowy forest. Suddenly the baby slipped and fell face down on the ice. When he got up, he saw his reflection in the ice. He knew that look, filled with hatred and a thirst for revenge. Yet Cyrus didn't understand why they looked so alike. Where did Ariana get such hatred? It was more than just a result of neglect and cruelty from her parents. It seemed her hatred was directed at more than just her own family. This is what aroused suspicion and at the same time interest. It seemed like her plan was to rely on the Eastern Duke, and he, in turn, might be connected to the death of the Northern Duke's parents, which is why he came to his ex-wife and daughter. Cyrus could not understand whether her alliance with the Eastern Duke would be a benefit or a burden for him. It was an unpredictable element. Normally, he would have destroyed her without a second thought. But this time he didn't want to do it. He saw some value in her and found her amusing. Victoria was in her room scolding the maids for not dressing her sister properly. The girl was breaking plates, and the maids were apologizing and explaining the situation. She didn't like that when Ariana chased them away. They left instead of forcing her to change her clothes. The maids told of their sister's claim that she was a lady. Victoria didn't like the fact that she thought this creature was of the same blood as her. It irritated her that this was falling on her. Some time ago, Elena blamed Victoria for everything that happened because it was she who asked to take Ariana to the ball. Her sister scolded her harshly for this act and hit her in the face. Rachel flew into the room and heard a crash. The mother began to separate her daughters. She started asking if anyone was hurt, but she only looked at Elena. Turning around, she told Victoria not to provoke her sister like that. She was the youngest, so she had to be restrained. As she left the room, she clutched her head. Victoria did not understand why their mother was always on Elena's side, although she was her own daughter. She couldn't believe that her mother still loved her eldest daughter, even after everything that had happened, and the third one didn't understand why. If this continues, then perhaps the mother will start to love Ariana too. Victoria didn't want to be in her place. She was in great pain from that blow from her sister. Victoria couldn't let this happen. None of this would have happened if her plan had worked as it should. She made Ariana the scapegoat again. It wasn't just her imagination. Her sister had really changed, but it was unclear why. Ariana sat leaning against the wall. The girl put her ear to the sound and listened to the screams. Someone was begging her to close her eyes to something. These were the two maids Victoria had been yelling at in the room. They were both thrown into the next cell on the orders of the third sister. They began to knock on the bars and beg to be let out. Ariana listened to this calmly. In her past life, Victoria was even kind to her servants in order to maintain her image. But, as expected, she is too young now. She couldn't withstand such pressure. It was good that Ariana returned to childhood, and not a couple of years ago. The heroine heard the sobbing of the maids from the neighboring cell. They should have been scared, but at least they were together. They had someone to turn to for comfort. The girl was shaking from the cold, but she got used to it. She needed to sleep for a couple of nights and everything would pass. She used to have dreams on days like these when she felt completely alone. She dreamed of a prince on a white horse. Suddenly, a blue-haired man burst in, shouting the heroine's name. He rushed to the girl and hugged her, saying that he could not imagine that his daughter would be treated like that. He stroked her head and invited her to go with him. He promised that no one would hurt her again. And they lived happily ever after. In that dream, she received exactly as much love as she needed. This time she pushed him away and said that she did not need the love of the Eastern Duke. Ariana was no longer going to beg for anyone's affection. The Duke began to disappear. He was nothing. If the girl cried over such nonsense, then everything would go in circles again. Suddenly, food appeared in the cell, which caused the girl to wake up. She thought it was a dream at first, but Cyrus said that hunger was bearable, but thirst was not the same. The girl noticed that the Duke always had business to do in their mansion. The guy thought that the girl was hinting at his leaving since he had fulfilled his duties. This time he was carrying the same lantern, which now seemed to be a symbol of his relentless determination and hidden control. She could be sure that he was not so petty as to consider a few sips of water a great favor shown to him. Ariana was already wondering how the guy managed to get in there again. She didn't understand why he continued to be kind to her. A sly smile appeared on his face. He noticed that she called a couple of sips of water good. It became clear to me how hard Ariana's life had been. The girl was pleased that her pain and her miserable existence were understood. The villain from her past life appeared before her eyes, asking if she would give in again. "Will give everything again." Just hearing empty words that anyone could say will again allow himself to be captivated by fake feelings. But the girl had changed and turned away from Cyrus. She would not allow herself to be deceived again, so the Duke had to stop trying to shake her resolve. Ariana told him that it would be better if he gave kindness to someone who really needed it. She told him about the lady in that mansion who dreamed of his kindness. He realized that she was talking about his eldest daughter. The girl was Bronte's favorite daughter. There was no place she couldn't go and no words she couldn't say. Elena could be useful to him. Cyrus could find out where she got his portrait from, but it was unclear why she needed to find out. His answer was short. He wanted to kill. Kill the artist who painted it, kill the one who sold it, kill the one who bought it, kill the one who admired it. Ariana just listened to this list. It was clear that the rumors about his cruelty were not lies. He didn't say this because he knew that Ariana had gotten the portrait on behalf of her sister Cyrus, asked why she had fallen silent, and had disowned it with her taciturnity. They said that the Duke was also not talkative. The guy asked again if the girl wanted him to shut up and get out. She didn't even know how to respond when such a clever Duke twisted everything. And if he didn't twist anything, he asked whether everything the girl said could then be taken literally, including the fact that the hearts of all the women looking at him beat faster. Ariana answered positively. He poked her in the chest with his finger and asked if her heart was beating faster too, his gaze penetrating, his gesture unexpectedly bold. The lantern fell, its light instantly extinguished, and the darkness in the room became even denser, as if the atmosphere itself reacted to what was happening, emphasizing that strange, ominous silence. The young people looked at each other, their gazes meeting in tense silence, full of unspoken questions and feelings, as if each of them was trying to understand what was hidden behind the other's face. A scream echoed through the vast hall, filling the air, cutting through the silence like a painful reminder that all was not as it should have been. Jacob asked if his wife was in her right mind to say that what happened in the garden was nonsense, and his voice trembled with bewilderment and confusion, because for him what happened was much more serious. It wasn't something that could just be forgotten. This child was the daughter of a princess and a duke, and there were even nobles from the capital at that party. Jacob didn't understand how he would be able to show his face to the public now. Rachel was very angry. Ariana was a completely different person at that party. If you think about it, she acted strange for a few days. One way or another, she couldn't leave it like that. She had to break her daughter's will again. She didn't want to take her with her during the season under any circumstances. The scandal needed to be buried. Ariana was too young, but her mother decided to simply make up a suitable story. Rachel asked Jacob not to worry. The problem with his daughter should be resolved soon. If Ariana behaved properly, her mother was going to give her to a decent family. But now she wanted her daughter to pay for her insolence, as if she had brought all this upon herself. In Cyrus's opinion, when the girl said that her heart was beating, it would have been nice to show the appropriate expression on her face, but she had not been raised as a noble lady, so she simply did not know how to do it. But her heart was beating because if it hadn't, the guy had interrupted and suggested she would be dead. The girl turned around with a smile, glad that he knew it. Cyrus was a little stunned by her smile, his gaze frozen on her face as if this unexpected spark of tenderness and sincerity had shaken him so much that he couldn't immediately realize that she wasn't just smiling, but giving him a moment. He said that sometimes a man would take a sword and cut off his own ear just to see a woman smile, and his words were full of insolence and black humor. But no one knew if Cyrus would have done so, because his words, full of determination and dark mystery, sounded like a challenge to himself. But the guy could say with confidence that her smile would become her weapon. The girl latched onto the word weapon, and the word spoken with such confident ease stuck in her head as if it had become a symbol of what she had to master in order to survive in this cruel world. If Ariana learns to control and manage her smile, she might be able to conquer the world. The girl compared it to the boy, feeling his words echo in her mind, as if she finally saw him as more than just a cruel and domineering man. He was pleased that the lady was quick to grasp the matter, and a slight admiration flashed in his eyes, as if he suddenly realized that this girl, despite her naivety or despair, possessed intelligence and intuition. But the Duke did not yet have the whole world, and this thought, like an icy veil, covered him, forcing him to think that even all his power, all his strength could not give him what he was truly looking for. He ran his hand over the lower part of the heroine's face, his touch unexpectedly soft, almost gentle, as if he wanted to remember her face, to capture the moment before leaving. Ariana exhaled. The Duke left again without saying a word, and at that moment her body finally relaxed, as if all the tension that had built up over that short but turbulent moment had finally released its power. Or perhaps he became invisible again, like he did in the kitchen. The girl glanced at the food that had been brought. She knew Cyrus wouldn't be kind without a reason. Therefore he wanted something from her. She threw the tray of food and water down because no matter what he wanted, it wouldn't make her feel better. She had no intention of leading him to such a cheap reception. Cyrus stood behind him and watched all this. No matter how accustomed the girl was to confinement, being locked in a room was not the same as being locked in a prison, and to remain so calm without drinking a drop of water was beyond the realm of possibility. This time Cyrus definitely left. He moved into a wooded area. The subjects fell to their knees when they saw their duke. These two were the captain of the Black Knights of the Northern Lands, Lewis, and the deputy captain, Noah. The Lord asked if they all confirmed that the nobles from the capital had left the western lands in a hurry in the morning, and the few who remained showed no desire to meet with the Western Duke. Considering that the Duke himself showed no interest in this party, it seems that it was indeed arranged as a preparation for the debut ball of the first daughter. Sir Isaac said he was bored, spending his days drinking in the pit, but Cyrus said there was no need to report to him about the fool's doings. The young men looked at his back questioningly, their gazes full of bewilderment and slight confusion, as if each of them was trying to understand what was driving this man. The Duke was asked whether he was returning north, and the question hung in the air like an unsolved riddle that seemed impossible to answer with certainty. But Cyrus replied that as long as they stayed there, his voice sounded confident and calm, as if he had long ago decided for himself that there would be no changes at this stage. They asked if it was connected with the second Bronte daughter, and the question hung in the air, full of hidden meaning, as if this moment were a key that could unlock something more. The Duke wondered who had told them this, and his gaze, cold and penetrating, pierced the room, as if he were looking not only for the source of the information, but also for the reasons behind these words. Isaac had just told them about this, and Noah had blurted out that they would soon have a duchess. He didn't like the slap on the back of the head, but the Duke himself began to boil with anger. Noah said he deserved to die for his chatter. Lewis said there was no point in staining the sword with the blood of an empty-headed partner. Cyrus was asked about his future plans. Since they had come so far, they couldn't return empty-handed, so they decided to stay another week. Ariana was released from the dungeon, and as the heavy doors of the castle closed behind her, she felt the cold air wrap around her face, as if she was finally leaving not only the dark walls, but all the pain that connected her to this place. After the pitch darkness, the daylight blinded her, and she froze for a moment, feeling the bright rays tearing at her perception, as if the whole world had suddenly become too real and too bright for her exhausted eyes. 3 or 4 days passed. The girl expected that she would not be kept locked up for long. In front of the second daughter stood that same beautiful Victoria. The white-haired girl reminded her of what her sister had gone through. Ariana decided to play the poor girl and blamed herself for the difficult situation of her hated relatives, but Victoria said that they had no problems. The girl said she simply didn't understand how bad her sister was, that it broke her heart. The heroine thanked her. Victoria volunteered to take her to the place where the girl would now stay. The next day the tailor was supposed to come since Ariana was going to the capital. She needed a beautiful dress. And the day after tomorrow they will have to choose jewelry. Because the lady didn't have any at all, it was worth buying more. Ariana thought they would ignore her for a while, but instead they were so polite. It was clear that they were up to something. She had to be careful. Because of her actions, the future had changed again. Victoria was worried that her sister did not look happy. I assumed she didn't like the dresses or jewelry. But Ariana was pleased. The girl was simply hungry and tormented by thirst. Victoria advised her to go home quickly and ask for food to be brought to her. Ariana said she was the only one she had. Victoria played along and said that Ariana was also her only one. The girl entered the room and closed the door behind her. She thought she would be sent back to that tiny attic room where she had lived before. Apparently, no one had been looking after the room all the time. Even the decorations that they were going to dress her with for the ball were still there. Victoria and Elena were not interested in outdated decorations. The maid said that she had brought food for her mistress, but her voice was too quiet, as if the phrase itself was just a formality that had no real meaning. Ariana had never seen this maid before, and despite her fatigue and pain, she still couldn't help but ask the question, as if she were searching for some kind of human connection in a world that had turned away from her, asking her name with that timid hope. The girl's name was Rosalind, and the name heard in the empty, lifeless room was like a breath of fresh air for Ariana. She had violet eyes like deep, mysterious lakes in which one could drown, and a gentle smile that seemed both sincere and secretive. And what will happen next we will find out very soon.